Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our Improving Your Money Habits, which is one of a series of presentations that we're doing with BIDMC. My name is Migdalia Gomez, and I'm our Community Engagement Manager here at the Harvard University Employees Credit Union, and I'm joined by Sarah Scruggs, who's our Community Engagement Specialist. And we're going to go over a couple of different things today, but before we jump in, I want to give you a little bit of background as to who we are at the Harvard University Employees Credit Union. So we are Harvard's not-for-profit financial institution. And a credit union is just like a bank, but the biggest difference is that as a credit union, we're not-for-profit, meaning that we are 100% focused on what is best for our membership and for our community, and as a result are able to offer lower rates on loans, higher rates on savings, and also a lot of personal finance education and other resources to overall improve the financial well-being of our community. For all of you at BIDMC, you're all eligible for membership. That's all that I will say about the credit union specifically, but if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask, and Sarah and I would be glad to help. To make sure that you're able to hear us and that you are able to ask questions, I'm going to ask for you to let us know via the chat or questions panel, which will be on the top hand navigation or on the right hand navigation. Where are you joining us from today? Again, this is going to be in the questions panel. It will depend on how you're logged in. If you're logged in on a computer, it's usually on the right-hand side. If you're on mobile, it could be a little bit different, or a tablet. Oh, wonderful. So I see that some folks have written in that they are joining from Cambridge, Somerville, BIDMC. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So just how you let us know where you're joining us from, this is the same way that you can submit any questions that you have, and Sarah and I will do our best to answer the questions. And if we're not able to answer during today's session, we will make sure that we send it to you in our follow-up email. So you will receive an email with information regarding the presentation that we covered today and also some additional resources. Most likely that email will be sent to you tomorrow. So what we're talking about today is improving our money habits. And the start of a year is always a great time for us to talk about this, because with the start of the year or the start of a new month or maybe just a new day, we're looking to ways to constantly improve ourselves. And financial well-being and improving our money habits is one of those ways that we can improve our overall financial situation. Now, before we get into the science, and a lot of what we will cover today is based off of behavioral science with information that we have from our partners at GreenPath Financial Wellness, want to talk a little bit first about what is driving you. So we'll talk about budgeting. We know essentially how that works. You want to spend less than what you make. You want to save a certain amount. So we know what we have to do. It's like a diet. It's like training for a marathon. It's like training for anything. There's usually some things that we have to do, but then life happens. So what exactly is getting in our way? And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to utilize behavioral science and how to use these money mind tricks to get the best out of what we're trying to accomplish. And the first thing we want to do is identify what is driving you. So what exactly does this mean? I hope that you have a piece of paper and pen, or if you are on the computer, hope you can open a tab and maybe a Word doc and just take a moment to write a financial goal. Because we are doing this in the first week of January, let's say, what is a financial goal that you have for the end of 2021? What is something that you would like to accomplish by the end of 2021 financially? We know how goals work, so you want to make it specific, measurable, achievable, realistic. You want to be able to do all of the SMART acronym pieces. Now, why is this important? This is going to be important because many people that are financially successful are not the ones that are necessarily the highest earners. And yes, having more income does help, but with more income can also come more expenses. Could also be lifestyle inflation. So what is one of the things that most individuals that are financially successful have in common is this idea of having a financial goal, working towards something. Now, this financial goal is going to be important throughout today's presentation. We will come back to it. So please, if you didn't take a moment, maybe you didn't write it down, but just think, where do you want to be financially? What's one financial goal that you have by the end of 2021. For the purpose of today's presentation, I'm going to say I'll come up with a financial goal for myself. That way we can use that as an example, and I'm sure Sarah will come up with one as well, and she may use that. So let's say that my financial goal is for me to save $5,000 for part of a down payment for a house. That is going to be the goal that I will have towards the end by the end of 2021. I want to save $5,000. Now, why is that going to be important? Well, it's going to be important because we're going to go back to it throughout today's presentation as we try to identify how our money personalities impact our ability to reach our financial goals. So what exactly are money personalities? Let's think about most things in life. We tend to have a certain way that we do things. We tend to have habits. We tend to have different things that we avoid, different things that we pursue, and money is no different. There are many different money personality structures out there. The one that we tend to follow closely at HBCU is the Klontz money script. And what this is, you can search and read the actual paper that was put together by Dr. Klontz, or you can take a money quiz, which for most of us, a little fun money quiz tends to be more enjoyable than sometimes reading the research. And Sarah will add the link in the chat so that you'll have it, or you could just Google NerdWallet Klontz money script. I will say you do not need to have a NerdWallet account for this. This is just for you to get the information. There's no need to open an account or subscribe to any of the NerdWallet resources. This is provided more for the quiz itself. But essentially, there are different types of money personalities. You have your money avoidance, your money worship, your money status, and your money vigilance. When you take this quiz, you'll learn where do you tend to fall. I want to start off saying that there's no wrong way. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I'm in money worship, this is bad. No, we are here to identify what our money behaviors are and then utilize that for our good. So what exactly is a money avoidance? A money avoidance is someone who will tend to, pretty explanatory that one, avoid it. So maybe you know you have to work on a budget, but you're like, I'm just not going to do it. For someone who's a money avoidance, it may be beneficial for them to schedule things like attend a workshop or schedule a time on their calendar to work on their budget. For someone who's a money worship, they may put more emphasis on money to the point that they may not look to they may spend money on categories that perhaps they could save. So for someone who's a money worship, a good tip would be for them to prepare a budget and identify, as part of that budget, identify what categories are helping them financially and which ones are more for the worship piece of money. Money status, that will be someone who tends to put more of their self-worth associating it with money. As a result, maybe perhaps when they're purchasing a product, they tend to go more with the brand name and the premium brand versus a store brand or something that may not be as noticeable. And then money vigilant is someone who may tend to oversave. And that is a thing. There are times that, money is a tool, and it's a tool that can help us with many different things, but it's including experiences. So someone who is money vigilant may save to the point that they are missing out on experiences. So someone who's money vigilant, a good strategy for them may be to see, okay, once I've reached a certain amount, perhaps building it into your budget, money for you to spend on things that will bring joy. There are a couple of different money mind tricks that we want to go over before we jump into the bulk of today's presentation. One of the first ones that is visualizing the goal, and this is something that you've probably heard with a lot of different things. We know athletes do this. We know a lot of individuals that are high achievers tend to do this, is visualize and start to feel what it feels like to reach that goal. One of the ways that we can do that with money is using separate accounts. If you are saving, and I'm going to go back to my example of trying to save $5,000 for my emergency fund by the end of 2021, if that is something that I'm working towards, but I have that money in the same account that I have for my day-to-day expenses, so like in my primary checking account, it's going to be very hard for me to distinguish what money is for my savings goal and what money is for my day-to-day. So one tip would be to create a separate account and name it. Name it my 2021 Emergency Savings Fund account. Try to be as specific as possible, because now that I've named that account, I have more of an emotional attachment to that account, and I'm going to be less likely to pull money out of that account to use for something else. So for example, if there's an opportunity to go out to eat at a nice restaurant and maybe dinner is going to be around $100 after a fancy meal and some drinks, well, I'm going to be less likely to go into my emergency fund account to take out $100. But if that $100 is in my checking account, I'm more likely to use those funds because there's no emotional attachment to those funds. Another piece is automatically saving, or setting up automatic savings based off of the goal. So let's go back to the initial goal that we all created when we started today's presentation. Whatever that dollar amount was, whether it was debt repayment or whether it was a savings goal, I would suggest dividing it, if you did an annual, divide it by 12. So in my case, if I'm trying to save $5,000 by the end of 2021, that's 400, and it's 416, but let's just call it $400 a month, which means if I'm paying every 2 weeks, it'd be about $200 every time I get paid, or $400 a week, or about $100 $400 a month, or $100 each week. So if that's the case, and if I set that up automatically, it's one less thing for me to think about. And this is going to be also very helpful, again, for those that are maybe money avoiders, because you don't have to think about it. And that's one of the things when we're utilizing money mind tricks, we want to create as little obstacles as possible. We want to remove any friction. So instead of us having to remember to save, let's set it up so that we would have to go out of our ways to avoid saving. Another money mind trick is using cash, which I know during these times is very, a lot of restaurants and a lot of businesses have requests that we don't do this. So of course, this is when it is more safe to do so, or goes back to being a more recommended option. That's when we would say utilize cash. But of course, with everything that we're saying, we do want to make sure that we keep in mind COVID-19 safety suggestions. Another one is setting up balance and spending alerts. One of the things that we do want to create is a little bit of friction when it comes to money that is spent. What happens with our credit card bills is that, or even our checking account statements, we get them at the end of the month. So we're getting this information after the money is spent, which it's helpful, but I don't know about you, but we don't have those time machines yet. So we can't go back in time and undo our spending. So setting up balance and spending alerts as it is happening will create a little bit of a friction, or I like to call it a little bit of a little pain point. So for example, if over the weekend I spent $100 somewhere, I typically go to a store, I tap my credit card, not quite feeling it. It's like, okay, the money's spent. I have the product as a result. So I'm not really feeling pain. I'm typically feeling excited because I just have this whatever the product is or whatever the experience is. But if I set up a balance alert that tells me you spent $100 yesterday, that's going to help me keep in mind my budget. It's going to alert me to, ooh, I spent how much this weekend? Okay, maybe for the rest of the week, I'm going to reduce my expenses, because again, I'm focusing on my financial goal, in my case, saving that $5,000 by the end of the year. And then the other one is creating mental shortcuts. So one of the things that I keep mentioning is we just want to make it as easy as possible for ourselves to stay on track to reach our financial goals. And to make things easy, we want to create habits and have shortcuts. So I'm going to have a quick activity for us to do right now. And I will say, let's assume it's pre-COVID times, or that if you are doing a ride share, that you were doing it safely, of course. If you were at your place of employment, or maybe you went out to dinner and you have to go from point A to point B, how many of you would want to spend $50 on a Lyft or a cab or some form of transportation? For some of you, you might be like, $50, that's too much. Okay, what about 25? What about $10? I'm going to give another example. Let's say that you're at work and you decided, you know what, I'm going to go out for lunch, or for those that are working from home, I'm going to order lunch today, or maybe I'll walk over and pick something up. Let's say that the lunch was $50. How many of you would want to spend $50 on a lunch? What about 25? What about $10? So at some point on both examples, there's probably a number that you were like, okay, that I will do. What you experienced was using a mental shortcut. You've already established in your mind how much money you would spend for certain things. Having these set up beforehand makes it easier for us, because then when we're put in a situation that we have to make a choice, we're not having to decide. And typically when we have to make a choice, we may end up spending more versus, okay, nope, I already decided $50. Nope, I'm not spending $50 on lunch. Maybe I'll do that on a special occasion. Maybe I'll do it on a vacation. But no, on a day-to-day, I'm not spending $50 on lunch. That right there is utilizing your mental shortcut. I mentioned earlier that we have a great partnership with GreenPath Financial Wellness, and they are accredited credit counselors. They also provide budget assistance, and this is all free, so you'll all have access to these resources. And one of the resources that they provide is that they have a behavioral scientist on staff, and they created this presentation. So we are for the next part of the session, Sarah and I will utilize their slides. And it's a fun presentation because they really are giving us the tools on how to improve our financial behaviors. Pre-commitment is when we decide ahead of time what we're going to do, and it's similar to those mental shortcuts that I just spoke about. There are a couple of different ways that we could do pre-commitment. One of them for a pre-commitment is to set up different roadblocks, such as I am going to, and I'm going to actually utilize one of Sarah's will not save her credit card information on apps. So that way, if she's going to spend money, she's going to have to go and get the credit card and add additional steps. So that is a pre-commitment of something that she's doing, so that she's creating those roadblocks or creating that friction to prevent herself from spending money. Something that I do is I have a very strict rule for myself that I do not make purchases right away. I will put them into my shopping cart. I will wait at least 24 hours, because I know that if I give myself time, I'm less likely to buy that item, and I'm therefore minimizing my impulse buys. Are these rules going to work 100% of the time? Maybe not. There are times that I absolutely need something, and of course I will do it. But because I have this already set up in place, it helps me reduce some of the expenses, and therefore helps me put the money towards other things that are more important to me. Another one is goal gradient theory. This is going to be really important, especially for those that are either trying to save money or do debt repayment, or both. I don't know about you, but I know I mentioned my goal earlier of saving $5,000 by the end of the year. If I'm trying to save $5,000 by the end of the year and I have $0 currently, that's a big goal, and that's overwhelming. And because it becomes overwhelming, I may not stick to it, because I may decide, well, I'm not going to get there, so why bother? But if I decide to break down my goal into smaller sub goals and say, okay, I have $0 now, but I want to reach 250 or 500 by next month, that's going to help me make the goal much more tangible, because I'm breaking it up into smaller chunks. And then when I reach that goal, I'm more likely to stick to my plan, because I've already had small successes to look back towards. For those of you that perhaps one of your financial goal was debt repayment, if you're trying to pay off, let's say $1,000, well, paying off $1,000 is a lot. But maybe you say, okay, I want to pay off $300 in the first 2 months of the year. That's going to help you so that you're seeing progress and are more likely, again, to stick to those goals. This is a really big one, and I don't know about you, but a lot of folks maybe had some time off during the holidays, or maybe when you go on a staycation, especially since a lot of us have been doing that recently. You make these lists of, I'm going to get all this stuff done. And then time passes and you're like, oops, I did not get a lot of these things done. That is a planning fallacy. So what this helps us when it comes to money and our money personalities and how to improve our money habits is realizing that things are going to take us more time and giving ourselves that permission to realize, okay, I'm probably not going to be able to, maybe I'm not going to be able to save the 5,000 by the end of the year. Maybe life will happen, maybe other expenses will come up, but realizing that even if I save 4,500 or 4,000, it's still going to be much better than if I didn't have a plan at all. And it also allows us to not be as hard on ourselves because once we start missing goals and missing deadlines, then it makes it much harder for us to stay on track. And then this one, decision paralysis. Decision paralysis, I always joke about this. I live close to a very large market basket, which is, I think, maybe a couple of years, was built recently. I think they have like 50 registers. It's immense. And there are two aisles dedicated to chips. So every time I go in there, I'm just like, there's so many chips. I don't know which one to buy. So what I tend to do is I either don't buy chips or I buy the same chips that I've always bought before because it's extremely overwhelming and I don't know how to make a decision. It's just like, there's so many here. So one of the things how does this apply towards money is if there's debt repayment, for those of you that may be thinking about debt repayment for 2021, one of the things that you could do is possibly refinance. But with refinancing, there are so many different options. You can refinance. First of all, what do you refinance? You can refinance your car, you can refinance credit card debt, a mortgage, personal loans. So you have to decide what debt you want to refinance. Then who do you refinance with? Do you go with your current lender? Do you go with new one? Do you go with someone that you've never utilized before? So there's so many decisions that can make it overwhelming to the point that you may decide not to refinance at all. Or for savings, knowing that, I probably could get more out of my money if I put it in a high yield savings account, but where do I start? There's so many different options. So one of the things to help with decision paralysis is putting time on the calendar, and we're going to combine two strategies here, decision paralysis and goal gradient. So you would put time on the calendar, maybe within the first week, you put on, maybe on Saturday for like an hour, I'm going to research high yield savings account this week. Next week, Saturday, that is when I would compare. The next week is when I will open it. That way you're giving yourself steps and making a decision. And it could also be that you research it and you decide, you know what, I'm sticking to what I currently have. But at least you're making that choice versus deciding not to do anything because it can be overwhelming. Another piece here for decision paralysis that may be helpful is speaking to professionals. As I mentioned, all of you have access to GreenPath Financial Wellness, and we will provide their information in today's presentation and also via the email that we will send with the recap of today's session. But that is another option, is if you're unsure what to do, is having the conversation with a professional who may be able to give you some context as to things to consider and provide additional suggestions for next steps. For anyone that's considering something such as like a home refinance, our mortgage loan originators will do that. You don't have to be a member of the credit union. As I mentioned, we're not for profit, and we will be the first to tell you to go with another lender if that is a better financial choice for you. For credit card, for budgeting, other refinancing options, the counselors at GreenPath can do that for free for you. And tunneling. So tunneling is another piece that when we're thinking about improving our money habits, and especially during these times, it's happened, it's come up, because when we have an emergency, we're focusing on that emergency. So for example, let's say that you're in a situation that something broke, you can decide what it is, and you need $5,000. You might decide to put it on a credit card and not think oh, what is the interest rate on that credit card? Is there a better option for me? Should I get a personal loan? Should I open a credit card and get it at 0% for this time period? Do I have access to borrow funds at a lower rate? When this happens, one of the suggestions that we have is, again, to speak to others so that they can provide a little bit more context. As always, you want to be cautious as who you speak to. You definitely probably don't want to speak to someone who doesn't know what the best options may be. So you always want to be careful that if you are speaking with someone, they're not rushing you to do something. Another piece too, when it comes to tunneling, is allowing yourself some time to make a decision and thinking, okay, what would happen if I don't decide today? Can I postpone this? And for most things, you can typically ask for a little bit more time, and that tends to be expected. I will say for us, something that we see often at the credit union, unfortunately, a lot of individuals that fall victims to scams and to fraud tend to be pressured into it. So if you are in a situation that there is an emergency and someone is pressuring you to make a choice quickly, that may actually be a red flag that something may be wrong because they're not allowing you the time to think things through and see what other options may be available to you. Now I went through a lot of different tips, but I'm going to turn it over now to Sarah, who's going to give us a couple more that are going to be specific to credit cards, but can also be applied towards other items in your personal finance budgets.
Thank you, Migdalia. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you have questions, the question panel is on either the right-hand side of your screen or at the top navigation, depending on how you logged in. And you can ask any questions there. We will either answer them if it pertains to what we're speaking about at that point in time, or answer them at the very end of our presentation tonight. So please don't hesitate to put questions in there. I know a couple people have joined us since we started the presentation, so I just wanted to remind everyone of that. Like Migdalia said, I'm Sarah Scruggs. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at the Credit Union, and I'm really excited to talk through a couple of examples with our credit cards, which can be sometimes dangerous for some of us. I know, like Migdalia said earlier, my example is I don't keep my credit card information in my phone. So my laziness will always win out over my wanting to buy something online normally, which helps. But if you change over to the next slide, we'll get started with these examples. So the first one is called mental accounting. We have definitely all done this. I know that I've done this. Is that we categorize and treat money a little bit differently depending on where it came from and where it's going. So one of the best examples that we can see for this is that sometimes we do mental accounting around holiday gifts. Obviously, we've just put all of that behind us for this year, but I know that for us, we actually have a group of birthdays coming up in my family in January. And sometimes I don't budget as well for gifts and think through those as well as I should, because although I know it's coming, so I know what's coming up, I don't always say like, okay, this is my budget and I need to stick to it. And for a lot of people, we want to give and give. We love doing that. And so sometimes when what we're buying is going to someone else, we sometimes don't think about our budget as much. And so this is one way of doing mental accounting that can sometimes hurt us in the long run. And when we're thinking about credit cards, for our credit cards, that's really money that is loaned to us. And so sometimes people will say like, oh, well, this isn't coming straight from my checking account. And sometimes we just don't think through every purchase that I make, I have to pay for. And so that is always something to remember with credit cards is that the money that you're using on your credit card, you will need to pay for at some point, even if that point isn't, via your checking account or savings account with a particular bank. And this example that GreenPath has is, I know this coffee's $8, but I'm on vacation. We do that a lot of times when we're thinking about traveling in the future, hopefully soon, and thinking about things in the future. We sometimes have a hard time making those mental accounting mistakes, saying like, oh, well, it's going to something good. Oh, well, I don't have responsibilities right now. I don't need to think about my money. We just have to be able to think through it a little bit, in advance. And that's something that Migdalia is saying about those money shortcuts, is saying, okay, maybe for holiday gifts this year, I'm not going to be spending more than X amount of money, so that I can make sure that I stay on budget and I'm able to continue providing gifts for my family or my friends, and I'm able to spend the money I would like to in the future. So sometimes you have to make those mental accounting adjustments by thinking about the future. This next example is something we are all extremely familiar with at this point in the pandemic, scarcity. Um, we are all human beings and we are motivated by shortage. Yes, we can tell ourselves logically, there will still be toilet paper in the store in 2 weeks when I run out of my, 12 rolls in the closet. But we all went out and got it anyway. There is this part of our brains that say, oh no, it's going to be gone soon. So in our panic, we say, well, then I have to get it. I have to get it now. And kind of like Migdal was saying about um, being pushed into a decision, this can push us quickly into a decision by thinking, oh my gosh, it's almost gone. I don't know if you have ever shopped on the Amazon flash deals page, but sometimes they tell you at the very bottom, 3 more products left. And sometimes on different websites, I know when I was doing some online Christmas shopping this year, it said, 2 left in stock. And knowing that number, I was more likely to go ahead and buy it then and not think through that purchase as much, because I was like, well, if I don't get it now, it may be gone. This also happens quite a bit. I don't know if any of you ever get the Bed Bath & Beyond 20% off coupon that every week it tells me, this is your last chance to use the coupon. It's on sale now. And then every week I get another 20% off coupon. And so what we do need to think about with scarcity is, okay, take the time to slow down and think logically through what you're about to purchase or what you're thinking about purchasing or investing into. We've got to stop and think about it. This example is, I have to get it now while it's on sale. The honest truth is, it's probably going to go on sale again at some point. You're not going to lose out on this opportunity. And if you really want it and it's in your budget, then down the road, you'll still have the opportunity to get that. It just may not be as on sale as it is right now, but you have to think through your purchases before just clicking a button and saying, I've got to do it now. And with credit cards, we really do think, okay, well, if I get it on sale now, I won't even have to pay it off for maybe 3-4 months. But in reality, you have to think about, okay, do I really want or need this item? And we're not here to say you don't need these items XXX. That's not our job, because everyone has their own opportunity to look at things and find their needs and wants that they would like to purchase and buy. But you just have to remember, is this possibly a sales tactic to get me to buy something? And a lot of advertising will do that to us. I know it's gotten me more than enough times. But you just have to remember, okay, is this an item that I need or want? The next one is lack of self-control. Let's be honest with ourselves. We all have lack of self-control at some point with something. It may not be with money. Maybe you're extremely self-controlled with your money. Maybe you know exactly what you'd like to do in the future with it. And so you never touch your paycheck, a portion of your paycheck, because it goes straight into your savings account. That's wonderful. But I know for myself included, sometimes when I'm going too fast or running through the motions, as we might say, sometimes that lack of self-control really gets to me. Obviously, as we start out this new year, everybody has all these brand new goals and things they'd like to do this year. and then we all kind of fall out of it at some point. I know probably myself, I'm already out of some of the goals. So that's totally okay. But when you're thinking about money, really slowing down and being intentional about it is going to help you with all of these categories. Because if you're able to be intentional and to slow down for things, you're going to be able to feel more in control, which will then help you make better decisions. And so when you're talking about lack of self-control, one that we go to often is tax returns. A lot of people like to get their tax returns, and once they get them, it's pretty easy to immediately spend it on something that maybe isn't a need or a want for quite a long time. So I tell people that's why it's so important that you have those goals that Migdalia spoke about in the beginning. We spoke about one financial goal that you have for this time. And of course, that timing can look very different for each of us. Some of us may have larger long-term goals, like saving for a down payment on a house or saving for our children or students' college funds. Maybe it's saving for a new car or even saving a good emergency savings. Those are all great goals to have. And we have to realize that we need to be determined to achieve those goals. So if it's a goal that's not aligning with what you'd want in the future, change the goal. It is okay to change your goals if they are not working for you and if they're not helping you move forward towards that goal. And so when we're thinking about lack of self-control, there are some people, and myself included, at times it's difficult to think about, okay, how is this impacting me in the future? Just because I want this on sale pair of, let's say, new jeans, does this push me towards my goal or does it detract from it? And can I weigh those two things? Maybe it doesn't help me with my goal in the future, but I need new jeans. That's an okay purchase if you need new jeans. But what you need to say is have that opportunity to find yourself and say, okay, what do I need? What do I want? And what are my goals for the future? A lot of times we can get caught up in, okay, what feels good right now? I know when I was going into the office every day previously, a lot of times I did not want to pack my lunch in the morning. And I was like, you know what, I'll just get something out or get something at CVS on the way to work. Um, and now that I'm able to really think through my day a little bit clearer because I'm at my house all of the time, I'm able to make better choices of, okay, I'm going to stay in and make sure that I cook my meals this week. And so you have to think through and have the time to think through these decisions. So that's why we say it's so important to not only make your goals, but to make sure you set aside time to think through those SMART goals, something that's achievable, something that's measurable, so that you're able to, keep yourself in check. And hyperbolic discounting is similar to lack of self-control at times. And this is something that I think I know that, especially when I started working right out of college, I was like, why in the world would I save money on rent when I could get a nice apartment because I have a big paycheck for the first time in my life? And why would I put any of the additional money into a retirement? I was 22 years old, and retirement is for people much older than me. At that point in time, I thought, wow, retirement's decades away. And so why should I be saving for it? But it's important, again, to sit down and to actually understand, okay, what do I want for my future? What are some things that I envision for myself financially in the future? It could be this year. Now that we're at the beginning of the year, a lot of people like to take a stock of their year and think about what's best for me this year. But I think we also need to move past that and think even longer towards the future. Say, what do I want 5 years from now? How do I want to feel financially, 10 years from now? Where do I want to be? And how am I going to hit those goals? And so what we have to do is say, yes, I deserve some nice things right now. And that is so true. And I hope all of us are doing a little bit to take care of ourselves right now. But we want to put some emphasis on the future as well. And what I like to kind of look at it as is a balance and say, yes, I need to enjoy my life now. And if you enjoy your life by getting a Starbucks coffee every single day, that's great. You can get a Starbucks coffee every day if you work it into your budget. But then you also need to say, you know, maybe I shouldn't get 5 Starbucks coffees every single day. Um, and maybe I can put additional money into, a college fund or possibly saving for a new car that I know I'll need in the future. So it's really finding yourself into a balance of, okay, things that I like and want and need now, and also myself in the future. So it's not, okay, I can have this now, but I can't have this in the future. But it's finding the balance to say, I can have this now, and I can also save for my future. So I really encourage, if you are young, if you are getting ready to retire, it is good time to put money into that retirement account, so that you can have a lot of fun when the retirement comes. And this one, is probably the most common that we see, and it's the what the hell effect. At a point, I know for myself, sometimes I'm like, oh, what does it matter anymore? I've already messed up, so I'm just not going to care about the rest of it. I've seen this a lot with myself. You can see the man on the picture here. He's doing it with his pizza. He's like, well, I've already had 2 slices of pizza, so what's the rest of the box? Um, and we do this a lot with our money. We say, well, you know what? I'm going to have these debts that I have to pay off forever. So what does it even matter to pay down additional debt at this point in time? Sometimes we can get so overwhelmed with what's happening in the very moment that we don't think, okay, there is opportunity to come back from this disappointment or failure or anger that we have with ourselves. There's opportunity to turn that around. And this happens not only in money, but so many different things. I mean, this is about being resilient and saying, okay, maybe I spent more than I wanted to on groceries this week, but that doesn't mean that I have to spend more than I want to next week on groceries. Or maybe I didn't hit my savings goal for this year, but that doesn't mean I didn't save at all. And you can go back and see the work that you have done. And I think that's so important, not only with our finances, but in life. A lot of these things apply outside of finances as well, which is the behavioral economics piece of it and is so important, is that we're thinking about, okay, just because something hasn't worked out so far doesn't mean it can't in the future. It doesn't mean that I can't put effort towards it. So maybe you do have a lot of debt that you're working on getting down to a more manageable size. Set up small goals for yourself so that you can see what you have accomplished. And even if maybe you don't reach one of those goals, you can say to yourself, but I can reach it in the future. So a lot of people just give up before they even can get back on track. But you have to give yourself the opportunity to be able to get back on track. And so I really challenge you, if there's something in your financial well-being that you've decided, you know what, that's just going to happen forever. I know for myself, one of the things that I always said was that, you know what, when I go to the store, I'm always going to shop off list. So it doesn't even matter how much I get. Well, that's not true. Maybe I can allow myself, okay, one thing that you can get that's not on your list or something you haven't budgeted for. Maybe give yourself one thing. But that doesn't mean that from now until the end of forever, I have to make those same mistakes. But it's all about being resilient. And like Migdalia said, we've partnered with GreenPath Financial Wellness for this presentation, and we're so thankful. They actually have behavioral economists on their staff, and they've put together this information. But they also have a free resource for you and anyone in your household, and that is budget counseling, credit report review, and COVID-19 support. And we recommend these services because they're free for anyone in our community, and they are accredited counselors. So they've been learning about these things. They're able to walk you through your specific plan, because your plan for the habits and things that you need to change are very different than, say, myself. So really getting that one-on-one opportunity to speak with somebody who is a counselor and is able to share these things with you, that's a really good opportunity. And what I love too is that they do have flexible hours. As you all work at Beth Israel, we know that healthcare workers and people in hospitals have a lot of pretty crazy hours. My sister is a nurse herself, so they are open until 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So you're able to set up a time that will work for your schedule. And you get to talk with somebody um, who is accredited, obviously, and then they also will stay with you through your different counseling sessions if that's what you'd like. You can always change your counselor if you don't see eye to eye on things, but you have the opportunity to stay with them. They know your information, and this is something that you can do from the comfort of your home and do it extremely safely. So we encourage you and anyone in your household to use these resources. That is our presentation for this evening. We are on all of the social media channels at MyHUECU. We also have a blog. It's blog.huecu.org. And that's a place where you can go to learn a little bit more about different personal finance topics. And we post probably about twice a week these days, and it is a really great place to learn more about specific topics that you're interested in. Maybe it's saving for a down payment for a home. You can go there and find some articles about that with tips and tricks. And so we recommend going to our blog if you have some of those questions. The next BIDMC webinar in the series is going to be buying a car. So if any of you are interested in learning more about auto buying, we will be doing that, I believe, February 3rd. So coming up in just about a month. And you can sign up for that presentation on huecu.org/BIDMC. And there'll also be previous sessions information there as well. So if you've missed a session and would like to see that information, that's all housed on the BIDMC page. If there are any questions, we'd love to help you with those. We are more than happy to answer questions about any of the material tonight, or if there are other questions that you all have, we're happy to help with that as well.
Thank you, Sarah. And as we give folks an opportunity to submit any questions that they have, one task or sort of quick takeaway that we would ask is before you log off, hopefully you do have that pen and paper near you or are able to open a electronic document. And what are 3 action items, next steps that you can take based off of what you learned today? Maybe it's opening up a specific savings account. Maybe it is scheduling a time and literally putting it on your calendar for this weekend, or maybe during this week to spend an hour or 2 on a specific personal finance project. We want to make sure that this information is helpful, but we also know that, you know, it's about improving those money habits. So one of the money habits that we think before you log off, and I know that we had the presentation go into 6, so you know, even if we do end a little bit early, you still have those extra couple of minutes. Try to create 3 next steps based off of what would be helpful from what we shared to your specific situation.